And the one we chose to go with today is the story of Loki becoming a mare, which is a female horse. And they did this to distract a giant stallion. Interesting.
Svadilfari,
Yeah, I think you're
I
right.
think.
Svadilfari.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
The stallion,
The
nonetheless,
stallion.
giant stallion's name.
And Loki succeeds so thoroughly as a female horse that they become pregnant.
Amazing. If
'Cause
only
why?
it was that easy.
I know.
Welcome back to Unpacking the Closet, the Queer Joy editions. I'm Jerry.
And I'm Caitlin. This season, we're exploring how queer joy shows up, not just in moments of fun, but as something sacred, political, and deeply human.
Today's episode is called Divine Drama, Queer Stories from the Ancients. Because long before we had labels or language, we had stories. And many of those stories, way gayer than modern retellings would like you to believe.
And since this episode is dropping just before Christmas, we will also explore Santa and Krampus. Yes, even our seasonal lore has a weirder, darker, and more fabulous roots than most people realize.
So, we're reclaiming the tales that colonization, the patriarchy, and translation, quote, cleared up, or erased, or straightwashed. Because queerness isn't new, it's ancient, mythic, powerful, and everywhere.
Yeah, I'm excited. And just so our listeners know, if you guys like this episode, let us know in the comments because there were so many. There were so many that we got overwhelmed.
This is our second recording.
Like literally, I got a migraine. No. I mean, I did get a migraine, but it had nothing to do with this episode. It's just ironic. But no, in reality, we got so overwhelmed because there's actually so many queer myths and legends and stories out there from cultures all over the world that it was actually really difficult to like narrow down and like make this like a concise episode. So this is just a few of many. So if you like this, let us know. We could do another episode again, maybe next season or the season after or whatever, with more. Because, man.
Yeah, it's so many, really. But we're starting with a really fun one, which some of you might recognize the name, and it is none other than Loki from Norse mythology.
Yeah, we all love Loki from Marvel. Wow, I had to think about that. I work at Disney. We all love Loki from Marvel, of course. But yes, Loki is an actual myth from Norse legends. And I think primarily people think of him as a he, but in reality, they're a queer gender fluid shape-shifting god. Loki on their own had so many that we had to just pick one story. Like there were multiple stories just for them.
Multiple. Yeah, I mean, as there should be for a queer gender fluid shape-shifting god from Greek mythology.
Yeah. Yeah, you know.
But that being said, Loki is one of the most explicitly gender fluid figures in Indo-European mythology. They are a trickster, a shapeshifter, a clever problem solver, and sometimes even the problem.
Yeah, very much. And the clearest queer-coded myth for the story of Loki, and the one we chose to go with today, is the story of Loki becoming a mare, which is a female horse. And they did this to distract a giant stallion. Interesting.
Svadilfari.
Yeah, I think you're right.
I think.
Svadilfari.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
The stallion, nonetheless, giant stallion's name.
And Loki succeeds so thoroughly as a female horse that they become pregnant.
Amazing. If only it was that easy.
I know.
And later, Loki gives birth to Sleipnir?
Yeah.
Yep, Sleipnir. Odin's iconic 8-legged steed.
Yeah.
Wow, this is a tongue twister.
It's
a story.
Gosh. In the Norse sagas, Loki also transforms into an old woman, brides, handmaidens, and other female identities. There is no disguise language. The texts treat the transformation as full embodiment. So it's not like a trick. It's not necessarily, it kind of goes along those lines, like we were saying, but in the original texts, it's seen as they become fully that person or that animal or whatever it is.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And then they also have several children. So they have Finir, I think, the wolf.
The wolf. Yeah.
They have Jomangandri, I think, the world serpent, and then Hel or Heel, not sure, Hel, the death goddess.
I think Hel. I think you're
Hel,
right. Yeah. And Fenrir.
Yeah, that
I
sounds right.
think, if I'm not mistaken, this is not a note here, but I just realized when we were reading this, is the name of a character in the Harry Potter books that's a werewolf.
Oh, interesting.
If I'm not mistaken, which doesn't surprise me because even though she who shall not be named is no longer welcome in our community, when originally reading these books when I was in high school, it was kind of fun to see how much Greek mythology and other mythology and stuff that she pulled from. Actually, things have a lot more meaning than you think they do when you read the books the first time. So
and
when
I
you
think
go
this
back,
goes for a lot of different books as well.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of authors will pull from previous myths and legends like these to make characters. I mean, obviously Loki being a
Oh, yeah.
Marvel character from the Avengers was pulled from Norse mythology.
Yeah.
Among other TV shows, I mean, historically, I'm thinking like when we get in the Greek, like Charmed, for instance, did like the Greek mythology twist. You see a lot of shows that involve magic, like mysticism and magic, that will involve these kinds of legends as well and pull from original texts with names and references.
Yeah. Or our favorite chaos that only lasted one season.
Chaos. Yeah,
A
we'll probably
tragedy.
get into that. But nonetheless, with Loki, the queerness is less subtext and more actually the text. You know?
Yeah, Loki definitely like is genderqueer, gender fluid, and definitely is that god that kind of makes everything fluid, everything a little queer, if we wanted to say that in today's context. Gender, reproduction, family structures, everything is a little bit more fluid with them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Which
So
brings us
interesting.
to another transgender reincarnated warrior of justice from the Mahabharata or Mahabharata
Yes.
from India, which is Shikhandi.
Shikhandi, the reincarnated warrior of justice, which I love. If anything needed to be made into a movie, I think this
Shikhandi.
one, so cool. How cool would that be? Actually does kind of give Mulan vibes just a little bit in terms of like that same kind of warrior,
Wronged
gender.
warrior.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, this one was interesting.
Shikhandi is one of the most significant trans figures in mythology, at least as far as one of the oldest being from the Mahabharata in India. So their story begins in a past life as Amba, a princess wronged by a warrior named Bhishma, after being abducted during the Swayamvara. Rejected by the man she loved and scorned by society, Amba vows to be reborn specifically to end Bhishma's life.
And if that is not just
ultimate revenge.
Like, I just love it. She reincarnates as Shikhandi, raised as a girl by the king, King Drupada. King Drupada, but destiny declares that they will become a man. Eventually, Shikhandi exchanges genders with a yaksha, which is like a nature spirit named, I'm so sorry if we mispronounce any of these. We are trying very hard.
Sithakarna.
Akarna. I think maybe that's right. Akarna. Yeah. The change is affirmed magically, socially, and legally. So they afterwards are fully 100% recognized as male.
Stunhakarna.
Stunhakarna.
Yeah.
Okay, Stunhakarna.
Yeah. Which is that's just the pronunciation because this is very difficult. Okay, then the Great War happens and Bhishma refuses to fight Shikhandi because he sees them as female. This allows Arjuna to shoot Bhishma down behind Shikhandi, fulfilling Amba's vow.
I love it.
Wow, it's great. No, if you all are interested in Hindu mythology, the Mahabharata has many different versions, and it's all war and mysticism. It's really great. Many books.
Yeah.
Many book texts.
Shikhandi's story is often cited by historians and Sanskrit scholars as evidence of longstanding South Asian understandings of trans identity and gender fluidity. So it's really a very important one out there, especially for our community. So especially I would suggest if you are trans yourself, or maybe know or love somebody who is trans, maybe this would be a great story to read, because I think it's a very powerful story. They are more powerful for having gone through their transformation, right? And it adds so much to the story. So yeah, I just think this story was really fun to learn.
It is. And I think because also, if I'm not mistaken, Shikhandi ties in directly to the Hydra,
Mm-hmm.
which are essentially trans women that are like mystical teachers in Hinduism, and they are worship or not worshipped. I guess they're kind of like this idea of third gender in Hindu culture, considered never strictly male or female. So I was mistaken, never strictly male or female, existing as a distinct gender identity in South Asian culture, and have a lot of spiritual roots in Hinduism.
Mm.
And are still around today, which is really interesting. And they got legal recognition in India in 2019.
Yeah. Love that. Yeah. I'm very happy to see, side note, I'm very happy to see India starting to go back to reclaiming their original beliefs and stuff like that, and tearing down some of the laws from Christian when like,
well,
Western
British, the
culture,
British
yeah,
Empire
British
specifically.
yeah.
And if you
Took
don't know
over.
the history of how India was developed as separate from the surrounding countries, definitely look into that. That's a good lesson on colonization.
Yeah. So
Speaking of colonization,
we have the Romans.
we have the Greco-Roman.
Romans. They started it all.
It's true.
I mean, we love them, but also,
we love the stories.
we love the stories that came from them, but maybe not so much the cultural impact in ways.
So that leads us into Achilles and Patroclus. Which is they had a relationship, which is one of the oldest documented queer-coded bonds in Western literature, coming from Homer's Iliad.
Yeah, they live together, they train together, they're inseparable. And when Patroclus dies, Achilles, you know what I'm saying? Grief is so ferocious. He refuses burial rites, goes into battle half mad with sorrow, and later insists that their ashes be mixed so they can't be separated in death.
If there is nothing that you think is queer than that, it's that. That has to be it. Let me mix my ashes with my partner. That's how inseparable
to be together for
we
eternity.
Are.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, if there's nothing as dramatic, we get the word drama from the Greeks.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So classical Greek writers explicitly describe them as lovers. Plato refers to, I think it's Achilles, as the lover of Patroclus.
Yeah.
I'm gonna keep messing that up.
Yeah.
It's wild.
Yeah, they're widely accepted as a romantic pair, and it wasn't until later, of course, under Roman Christian influence, that other interpretations and attempts were made to de-gay them into just being friends, which is crazy.
Well,
how can you even like read those stories? Yeah.
You know, they slept together, they lived together, they're inseparable.
They were just roommates.
They're just roommates. Just completely roommates. Just no. They want to mix their ashes together because they're that good friends.
So normal. Yeah.
That's
Don't
so
we all?
straight.
Yeah.
No women insight. Just
But that's fine. Yeah.
That's fine. And
don't think about it too hard.
We see this throughout history, and definitely nonetheless in the Greco-Roman history too. And similarly, I really didn't know that Apollo had like a queer lover.
Yeah, I hadn't heard that one either.
I hadn't heard that either, so I was very surprised when Hyacinthus came up. So Apollo, as most know, is the god of music, radiant beauty. But what I didn't remember was that he fell so deeply in love with a mortal youth named Hyacinthus.
Yeah, their relationship is described as being like tender and joyful. They practice discus throwing together. They compete in friendly games. They share long summer afternoons together. But tragedy strikes when Apollo throws a discus that ricochets and actually kills Hyacinthus. In some versions, that was done on purpose by the wind god. Like the wind god on purpose blows the discus out of whack to purposefully kill Hyacinthus, but not in all versions is it like that.
Sure. Nonetheless, Apollo is heartbroken, as anyone would if they accidentally killed their lover, and refuses Hades, who's the god of the underworld, to take him. So instead, he transforms Hyacinthus' blood into the hyacinth flower.
Hyacinth.
Ensuring his beauty lives on, and hence the representation of hyacinth as a queer representation, which if you didn't know, there's a long history of flowers being representation of queer love. Maybe we should do an episode on that. Let us know in the comments.
Yeah, that would be fun. I would like that. But yeah, you can see this myth is one of the strongest like ancient examples of male divine love.
For sure.
Yeah, so interesting.
Yeah, I just had no idea. I imagine a lot of these stories just don't make it into the mainstream a lot. I mean, there are books and books and on Roman, Greek, Hinduism, all of these different cultural backgrounds and historical myths that I guess if you just grow up normally, you don't really get these part of the myths. Like I remember learning about this in school, conveniently left out this part.
Yeah. They just tell you the other stories that aren't queer. Yeah.
Right. They're like, yeah, but it's cool that, they're like killing lovers left and right, but the gay stuff we're going to leave to the side. So
yeah. We don't need that.
We don't need that. Apparently we do. So we're talking about it.
Yeah, exactly. Hence this episode. But next we go into, of course, our favorite, Sappho. Sappho of Lesbos was actually a real poet and one of the most revered of the ancient world, but I believe there wasn't a lot of information, right? Which is why she kind of gets thrown in with myth.
Yeah, a lot of her poetry got destroyed. So what we do have is some fragments of love letters to women. That's why you see her often pictured like on the shoulder of another woman, things like that. She called female lovers the sweetest. So referred to women in a lot of endearing terminology that would have been unusual for the time. Describes passion, longing, desire, and heartbreaks. Uses metaphors of heat, trembling, devotion. And her poetry is now the reason we have words like lesbian or sapphic. That whole idea of using the word sapphic comes directly from Sappho. And over time, this is another situation of just the historical and intentional suppression and burning that happened during the medieval periods. But nonetheless, some of it has survived and is clearly very influential today, at least here in North America, specifically Los Angeles. I mean, we throw the word sapphic around all the time.
Yeah. Not to mention that you and your wife, of course, visited the island of Lesbos.
Yes, we did. And there is an international women's festival there that it can definitely link below for it. But it's actually one of the largest islands. It's just not necessarily a tourist attraction.
Yeah.
But it's cool because there's like statues of Sappho. Obviously, a queer women's international festival goes on there every year, run by a lot of older sapphic folks. It was a really great experience.
Yeah.
For sure. Highly suggest if anybody can make the trip. It is a 14-hour flight.
Yeah. Next, we have Dionysus.
Mm-hmm. God of wine.
Yeah, god of wine. Dionysus, really quick, side note that I might cut out. But again, I think I've said this before, but I used to love Fantasia as a kid, the Disney movie Fantasia that has no talking. And Dionysus has a whole part with it's like the whole section is all like Greco-Roman, and it goes through the centaurs, and like it has like Pegasi,
Oh, I
whatever.
forgot about Fantasia. That's
Yeah.
just like, that's so Raven Whiplash.
Yeah, there's a whole scene about Dionysus, and he's like getting drunk. They're all making wine for him, and like the donkey's taking him around, and he's like falling off of his thing. It's really funny.
Amazing.
Anyway, that's what I think of every time I see Dionysus. He is the version from Fantasia in my head.
But anyway, I'm just thinking of Chaos.
I know, yeah.
Y'all haven't seen it. It's like, what, 8 or 9 episodes or something like that?
Yeah, it really should be multiple seasons.
It should be multiple seasons. The cast was amazing. But nonetheless, Dionysus was really embodied well in that show, because we're talking God of wine, ecstasy, theater, and I mean, really no boundaries.
Yeah. Liberation. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. He was born from Zeus and carried in Zeus's thigh, which is so strange.
Zeus has a lot of interesting ways of having children, and has quite a lot of them, because that would be most of the pantheon.
Yes, but he was raised by nymphs, and he's surrounded by gender non-conforming followers. The Maenads? The Maenads?
He might be Maenads. Yeah, I think that's right.
The Maenads. And Dionysus tends to be portrayed in like robes. They all were, but like very like soft features, often very intentionally kind of androgynous. Yeah.
And, you know, he represents queerness in a lot of ways. One, rejecting kind of those rigid gender roles, embracing the idea of celebration, breaking the binary between human and divine. And so while not necessarily the most explicitly queer character, you definitely can read between the lines.
Yeah, absolutely. And at the very least, clearly a supporter of the queer community.
For sure. Party hardy.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's an ally.
My brain wasn't working.
That's okay. Yeah, Dionysus is great.
Yeah, Dionysus is fun.
The next one we have on here is Tiresias, which
I swear they're not all going to be Greco-Roman. We have 3 more, and then we'll move on, I promise.
Yeah.
There's just so many.
There's just so many when you're talking about the Greco-Roman history. It's very, and it's more explicit than some other ones, for sure.
Yeah.
Coming from the ancient world.
Yes.
But Tiresias is one of those like rare mythic characters who fully lives as both genders.
Yeah. So what is after striking 2 mating snakes?
So he striked 2 snakes that were mating.
Yeah.
And then transformed into a woman for 7 years. Yeah. Marries a man.
Why not?
Lives socially and bodily as a woman. And then runs into the snakes again and transforms back into a man.
As you do.
As one does. As one can. So
in this world,
you just run into 2 mating snakes and you can change your whole life.
Yep.
I mean, I guess that's how it goes. Maybe it's more of like, you see 2 gay people and then you're like, I guess that's me too.
Yeah, sure.
That's how I'm going to read the story. The mating snakes were queer people that he ran into.
And because Tiresias has lived as both genders, there's actually a whole conversation between him and Zeus and Hera, where Zeus and Hera ask him who enjoys sex more. And Tiresias answers that women do. Very interesting. And
hot take
counter
from Tiresias.
Yeah. Counter to popular belief nowadays, people always think that men enjoy sex more than women. But according to Tiresias, it's the opposite.
He's got some hot takes for the modern world. And Hera binds him for the truth, actually. And Zeus
blinds him.
Blinds him for the truth. And Zeus compensates with prophetic vision. So he loses his sight, but then has the ability to have prophecies, vision, which is really interesting because his story is just like basically a meditation on gender embodiment and lived experience.
Yeah. How interesting that Hera, you would think that it would have been Zeus that would blind him for the truth because he said women, right? You would think Zeus would be the one offended by that, but it's interesting that it's
blinding truth.
Yeah.
That women enjoy sex more.
Yeah, that like for some reason she didn't want men knowing that.
I'm going to have to reread the story.
Yeah,
I guess
interesting.
If anybody knows, drop it in the comments because I'm curious because I haven't read this one in a really long time.
Yeah. But yeah, that's such an interesting story. That one just so many twists and turns.
So many twists and turns.
Which makes sense because snakes. So there you go.
Yeah, I mean, fair enough.
And then next, of course, we have Hermaphroditus.
Of course.
The child of Hermes and Aphrodite, who encounters the nymph Salmacis.
I think that's right. Salmacis?
Who becomes obsessed with him. And when she embraces him in a sacred pool, she prays to the gods that they'll never be separated. And the gods merge their bodies into one, creating a being that embodies both male and female physical traits. Are we seeing a reoccurring pattern here?
Right. And to this point, we get a lot of the words we could have today for queerness from Greco-Roman myths and legends. Yes. We have lesbian from Lesbos, where Sappho was born. We have sapphic from Sappho herself. And then here, a word that we do not use anymore, hermaphrodite. Yeah. But that's a lot of these words actually were used clinically against the queer community. And so it's interesting, some of them we have reclaimed and some of them not so much, like this one.
Yeah.
That I imagine would be the kind of understanding that we have today of intersex.
Correct. Yeah, exactly. Because they are embodying both fully male and female physical traits after becoming one. Yeah.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And this is one of the most ancient acknowledgments that we have of intersex embodiment, to my knowledge. I know there are more. So if our listeners know of some more, historical ancient acknowledgments of intersex, please share them in the comments. I'd love to learn a little bit more historically about where that has come up.
Yeah. And like I said, we could do a whole nother episode on even more of these. There's so many that we can go through.
Speaking of, I think we got one left, which is Orpheus.
One left for the Greco-Roman.
The Greco-Roman. Right. The Grec, as I just called it. The Grecs, I'm just making up my own words as I go along, whatever. Welcome to Jerry's Dictionary. So Orpheus and the Maenads, which we talked about a little bit earlier. So after losing Eurydice and failing to bring her back from the underworld, Orpheus swears off relationships with women and turns to loving men.
Yeah,
naturally.
Of course. For some reason, this angers Dionysus's followers, the Maenads, who then tear him apart, not because he was queer. I know that's what you were all thinking. Then you're like, wait, you just told us that the Maenads were cool like that. No, because he rejected Dionysian rites.
Well,
because,
when
there's
you
always
betray
a twist.
The gods,
you gotta pay for it. Yeah.
Right. And so this myth reveals ancient acceptance of kind of that fluid sensuality, even among the heroes.
Yeah. It was not at all about the fact that he decided to just love men. It was just that he didn't do the proper thing by the gods.
And that's the thing about Greco-Roman mythology, is it's all about what the gods want. If you do something
correct
that makes the gods mad, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
And we see this time and time again through these myths.
Yeah. Yeah. And what will make the gods mad? You really don't know.
You don't know all the time. You just really do things. And then suddenly you are a flower.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or you're condemned to
or
the underworld or torn apart or whatever,
Aren't we glad we aren't living in ancient Roman times?
Yeah. So funny.
It is.
So, okay. So next part, this is purely because of the season that we are in. We've been talking about Yule. It's Christmas time. We felt like we could not do a myth legend episode during this time of year without talking about the big man himself, Santa, as well as his counterpart, Krampus. So that is our next story. Very excited.
Saint Nicholas.
Yeah.
So Santa Claus draws from a couple of different legends and myths, actually. So we have Saint Nicholas, who was a real 4th century bishop known for charity. Mm-hmm. There was a lot of this whole put coins in the kids' shoes kind of thing, if you've ever heard about
Kind
that.
of a little Robin Hoodie, a little take from the
Yes.
rich, give to the
The
poor.
poor. And then you have Odin, who is Norse mythology, who wrote, we talked
got
about
the 8-legged horse from Loki's child. We bring it back. It always comes back.
We do. And rewarded children during midwinter. So there's that legend too. And then, of course, you have the Germanic winter spirit, the Yule Father, which, we know we're going to kind of mix some of these together. And there we get old Saint Nick.
Yep,
we get Santa Claus.
Santa. He represents generosity, community, and liminal magic, which is kind of a fun blend of like Christian, Norse, folklore. It's like you get a little bit of everything, which I just find so not very many ancient god myths, legends, whatever, have survived and blended to the point where they're still so prominent in culture today, which I think makes
capitalism.
Santa. Yeah, I know. Yeah. Thank you, Coca-Cola, for deciding to really put it all in on Santa at some point.
And we're all being ironic, we know. But it is interesting because I do think this is another one of those examples of Christianity kind of pulling from other ancient myths and legends to make something more modern. And I don't know exactly. Yeah, I guess it would be like the 4th century when St. Nicholas actually lived. So I imagine that the legend of St. Nicholas and Santa Claus came after he may have passed, and it makes sense that they would pull from these other folkloric traditions in order to spread the word of Christianity.
Right. Yeah. With a lot of holidays that we get now from Christian Catholic tradition, like you said, it's this exact same thing. They said, okay, we have this thing that we want to celebrate, and this is what happened. And all these people that we want to convert celebrate this other thing, and it's kind of similar. So let's just put it together and be like, oh, look, we celebrate that too. We just call it this.
Yep. You see this in in Native American also, but also in I want to say South American religions like Santeria and things like that.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, always just really interesting. And then, of course, you have Krampus. Now, Krampus did not hang on quite as strongly as Santa himself, but originally in Alpine pagan traditions, where you had a Santa Father Yule spirit type thing, you had the Dark Companion. So Krampus predates the Christian version of Santa Claus. And he is often seen as like evil today. We look at him as evil, kind of like people tend to look at like devil deities, things like that as evil, even though they're not actually, and that's a whole nother subject. But anyway, he's very similar. Horned, hooved, he's a little wild, and he is the winter spirit of consequence and shadow. He is the opposite of Santa.
Right, like maybe more of like a counterpart, like winter's reminder that the darkness is part of the cycle. Correct. Which I actually kind of like that would be a counterpart to Santa Claus, because there is an aspect of duality in that. Lightness and darkness, order and chaos.
Alphaba and Glinda. I just watched Wicked.
It's a whole nother queer story in and of itself.
We should so do a whole episode about Wicked, because it is the book.
I'm gonna have to watch it because I haven't seen either of them. Actually, I know I'm way behind.
We're gonna have to do a Wicked deep dive. Anyway, back to it. But yeah, you have the pairing of Santa and Krampus, and it's supposed to mirror the old traditions of dual deities, right? That you always had like a light and dark, an order and a chaos. And they also are kind of like that trickster archetype that we talked about with Loki, is kind of the same idea with Krampus. And Loki is kind of the opposite of Thor. So kind of a very similar vibe. Yeah.
I love this idea.
Yeah.
I don't know. I like the idea of having cycles of things and not seeing everything as necessarily black and white, but kind of like you
Mhm.
can't have the darkness without the light.
Correct. You can't have one without the other. Yeah.
Which is very on theme for Yule, winter, all
Yeah.
that.
Next, we are talking, okay, this is also not a queer legend. However, this legend goes with our whole theme this season of transformation. We are in a time of transformation within the seasons right now with Yule and everything. But also, ironically enough, this came up in our like searches for myths and legends to talk about. And I had already pulled one of my tarot cards for our community on social media. And my tarot cards that I have are they're based off of a bunch of myths and legends from all over the world. And ironically enough, I just pulled the Crane Wife as like our tarot card recently. So we had to throw it in here. I know it's not queer, but it is about transformation. And it comes from Japan. It's a Japanese myth. And in the myth, a poor man discovers an injured crane and helps it heal. The next day, a mysterious woman appears offering to become his wife.
How strange.
How odd. Weird. Of course, as you can guess, secretly she is the crane in human form. She begins weaving luxurious cloth to support them, but each time she secretly plucks her own feathers to create it, and she grows weaker.
And then, when her husband spies on her, breaking her plea for privacy, so he kind of overstepped those boundaries there. Her secret is exposed, and she flies away forever, which honestly is the best, thing you should do when somebody oversteps their boundary. Fly away. Or talk about it, then fly away if it doesn't get resolved.
Yeah, maybe do that.
Maybe the healthier version. But in many interpretations, her story really symbolizes sacrifice, boundaries, transformation, and the danger of violating trust.
Yeah, which is a lot of stuff we've talked about during this season. It's been a very reoccurring theme, which is, again, why we decided to go ahead and put this story in here.
Absolutely. Themes of renewal, grief, and letting go.
Yeah. I just think that's so funny that it came up right after I had pulled this card on the social media channel. Crazy.
It's wild.
Yeah, it's so funny.
And this kind of puts us into a more like historically documented queer diverse traditions
rather than mythology.
Rather than mythology.
We're going to kind of delve into, at the last part here, we're going to delve more into like historically accurate things, like real life people, real life groups, because even though we're talking about, myths and legends, sometimes legends come from truth. So we had to include a few of those as well.
Absolutely, which puts we're moving from Japan to China.
Yes.
So we're talking about the passion of the cut sleeve.
This is during the Han Dynasty. So we're talking 206 BCE to 220 CE. And if those of you who may not know, because the letters have changed since we were actually in high school, BCE, CE rather than BC and AC, I think is what it used to be.
AD?
AD, thank you. So used to be annotated as before Christ and after death. Something along those lines. And it has been updated to not center Christianity because, science. And
because it's not the only way.
Yeah. So if you are confused by the letters I just said, we're talking 206 BCE. That means the before the Common Era, and 220 CE, which means Common Era. We are now in the Common Era. Anyway, Emperor of Han formed a deeply intimate relationship with a male court named Dong Xian. Their partnership is one of the most well-documented same-sex relationships in ancient China.
Amazing. So the story goes, one afternoon, Emperor Ai and Dong Xian were resting together. The young courtier had fallen asleep with his head on the emperor's sleeve. When Emperor Ai had to rise to attend state affairs, he chose not to wake his lover. Instead, he cut off the sleeve of his robe so Dong Xiang could sleep peacefully. Oh, that's so sweet.
We all cry.
We all start to cry. And hence, the simple act became kind of a cultural idiom, the passion of the cut sleeve, and was used for centuries in literature to refer openly to male love.
Aww.
Which is a really cute story.
The story is recorded in the Book of Han, making it one of the earliest documented examples of queer love in Chinese imperial history. It shows a period where same-sex partnership was not stigmatized, but woven into elite culture and poetry.
I want to say, let me see. Damn. I want to say, yes. So in Amsterdam, there's the Museum of Sex. So it's Sex Museum Amsterdam Venistempel. My Dutch is not good. Just letting you all know. But nonetheless, I believe I went to Amsterdam a few years ago and I saw I don't think it was Emperor Han or Emperor Ai, but I will say that there is an extensive collection of explicit paintings and pictures, a lot of which are also queer, that come from China. And Japan, for that matter. So it's really interesting that there's so much stigmatism today because it wasn't so normalized, and it wasn't so stigmatized at certain points in history. And we can see, even by talking about kind of these mythical legends and even historical stories, how times kind of go up and down and change.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Yeah, it really is. And then that leads us, of course, here to the Americas.
To the Americas.
As we always do, here to the Americas, talking about Indigenous Americas. Now, an important clarification before we start talking about some specific tribes and their traditions. Terms like Two-Spirit are more modern and pan-Indigenous. They should not necessarily be retroactively applied to every tribe. Every single tribe was different. They all had different cultures and languages, cosmology, categories. I mean, very, very different. So just keep that in mind while we're talking but we will talk about specific cultures that have well documented, like, gender diverse traditions.
And thank you for that distinction, because I think a lot of folks do tend to lump Indigenous cultures together. And so we are only going to talk about a few that we've researched today. The first being Navajo. So this would be the story of Nahatlihi, meaning one who transformed, one who changes.
Yeah. And in Navajo cosmology, the Nahatlihi are individuals who embody a fluid or mixed gender role. This identity was rooted in creation stories, notably the tale of changing women and her children. And her transformations of gender and form are natural and sacred and respected.
And this is historically documented. Anthropologists and Indigenous scholars emphasize that the Nahatlihi often held ceremonial roles, responsibilities as mediators or healers, and had a position of social importance. So they existed long before Western contact and were part of the Navajo worldview from the beginning.
Yeah. They aren't queer, right? We're not putting today's terms on them because that wouldn't be accurate. But they are a culturally specific role that resists binary categorization, but is deeply honored. This is an example of how gender diversity existed long before colonial gender systems. Yeah.
Which is just really, really interesting and cool to learn about.
Yeah. And also kind of sad.
Yeah, very, very sad that one of the things that I see that I think we talk about a lot off the pod is, the erasure of different cultures.
Yeah.
And I think that's why this episode is so important, is kind of emphasizing these parts of these different cultural myths and legends that may reflect queerness either directly or indirectly because we don't learn about it in school, and it was erased or tried to be erased historically from documents by burning things, westernization and colonization. So
the missions specifically for Indigenous America. Yeah.
And so it's great that, you know, at least there's still some information out there. And I know the Indigenous folks really hold tightly to their traditions, and I'm so glad that they do.
Yeah, yeah. Next, we have the Lakota and the Winkate, which commonly is translated as a person who is inclined to behave like a woman, though this is kind of an oversimplification.
They had a cultural role. So the Winkate individuals traditionally occupied some ceremonial and social roles within some Lakota communities. So early ethnographic accounts describe the Winkate as gender diverse, often connected to ceremonial responsibilities and respected within certain Lakota societies, although attitudes varied by era and
band. Yeah. Pre-colonial accounts describe the Winkate individuals participating in naming ceremonies, the preparation of sacred items, and mediation between social roles. Colonization and Christianization later reframed these roles negatively. But prior to this, their identities were recognized as part of Lakota's social structure. Their traditions really remind us that gender diversity is not a modern invention. It existed across what they called Turtle Island long before European binaries were imposed.
And I think that's kind of the moral of the story here for the pod. You know, queer myths aren't fringe. They're actually foundational, and they're everywhere, from India to Greece to the frozen north. It's everywhere.
And when stories get erased or overwritten, reclaiming them becomes kind of magic, a healing, like a homecoming.
Absolutely. And this solstice season reminds us that light returns, so does the stories, and so does our power.
Yeah, we deserve myths that look like us. Wild, complicated, radiant, messy, gender expanding, heart expanding, because our ancestors were telling queer stories long before anyone tried to stop.
And we should keep telling them.
Yeah.
So if you want to hear more, let us know in the comments below.
Yeah, and we'll see you next week.
Keep showing up even when it's messy. We'll see you next time in the closet.